Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Leadership Purpose with Dr. Robin podcast. I'm so glad you're here and listening into the podcast. I will say it again over and over again that I really, really appreciate you for listening in and being a follower of the podcast. And because you've been such a faithful listener, we've been ranked in the top 5% of all podcasts globally, according to Listen Notes. So thank you for that. And if you would help us to continue to keep the podcast going, go over and rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. And if you know someone who you think might find this interesting, share it with them. It'll mean a lot to us. All right, so now let's get into the episode. Today is another solo episode. And if you listened to the last episode, we talked about that quiet moment so many women in leadership face. The moment when your outer life and your inner truth stop matching. That space in between, I call the purpose gap. When there's a space, a gap, a missing piece in between your outer life and your inner truth. So we talked about that in the last episode. And today we're going to talk about what happens next. Because once you start feeling that crossroads, you're at this crossroads, and particularly a career crossroads, another shift begins. The woman you were and the woman you are becoming start to separate. And this can be one of the most emotionally confusing and transformative seasons of a woman's life. So if you're not driving or in motion, go ahead and grab your tea or water or even a journal or whatever you need. And let's talk about this for a few minutes. There comes a moment in your evolution where who you used to be stops being big enough to hold who you're becoming. All right, let me say that again. There comes a moment in your evolution where who you used to be stops being enough to hold who you are becoming. And it's subtle, it's not dramatic. There isn't a meltdown or a breakdown. It's more like a quiet noticing, a soft discomfort, a sense that you're wearing a version of yourself that no longer fits. Maybe it's the way you lead. Maybe it's the role you're in. Maybe it's the way you've been showing up in your relationships or your ambition or your identity. But something inside of you is changing. And here's the deeper truth. Identity shifts always start long, long before we consciously recognize them. You don't wake up one day and suddenly reinvent yourself. You feel it, you sense it, you observe it. You notice that the things that used to motivate you don't anymore. The habits that once served you stop feeling aligned. The roles you played for years feel heavier than they used to. And it's like your soul is slowly rearranging itself. And now you're beginning to catch up. And here's something we rarely discuss. Transition isn't hard because you don't know what you want. The reason it's hard is because you're in between identities. You've outgrown one version of yourself, but you haven't fully stepped into the next. You're shedding, you're expanding, you're releasing, and you're awakening. And that process is emotional because identity is emotional. Women in leadership are often taught to just power through, just press through, to stay stable, consistent, and predictable. Evolution? Evolution is anything but predictable. Identity evolution can feel like grief, or it could feel like relief, sometimes excitement, fear, sometimes clarity or confusion, or all of these at the same time. This evolution and growing into who you are becoming can feel like all of those things. But that doesn't mean you're unstable. It means you're becoming. So now let's talk about the version of you that built the life, the career you have now. She was strong. She was determined. She pushed, she performed, she delivered. She carried things no one else could carry. She was a woman who said yes when opportunities came. She was the woman who got things done. And she was the woman who learned how to lead in systems not built for her. And she deserved so much compassion. But here's the truth: she was building from survival, ambition, expectations, and evidence. But the woman you're becoming, she builds from alignment, wisdom, truth, and desire. It's a different operating system. Neither is wrong, both are you. But they are different stages of your evolution. And part of growing into your next chapter is honoring the woman who got you here without forcing yourself to remain who she was. Okay, let's take a quick pause here. I just want to say, if you are a woman in leadership and you've been feeling that quiet shift inside, that sense you've outgrown a chapter and you're craving more clarity, more direction, more purpose alignment, then I want to invite you to something special. I'm creating a brand new clarity experience designed specially for women in leadership who are navigating a career crossroads. And before it launches, I'm opening a small, intimate, early access circle where you'll get to shape the very first version of it. So if this season of your career is asking for deeper clarity, go to robinlowens.com/waitlist and request early access. That's robinlowens.com/waitlist. Okay, now back to the episode. All right, so let's talk about the woman rising inside of you. She's less interested in proving and more interested in aligning. She's less invested in impressing and more invested in expressing. She's less driven by expectation and more guided by truth. She is softer and stronger, clearer and calmer, still ambitious, but differently, less performative and more who she is, less frantic and more grounded, less quote unquote successful in traditional ways of thinking about that, and more aligned. She wants spaciousness, she wants meaning, she wants depth, and she wants to feel at home in her own career and life. And she refuses to be rushed. This woman, the one that is emerging inside of you, is the wisest version of you you've ever known. And the gap you're feeling right now, that emotional tension, that sense of being in between, that's the space between who you were and who you're becoming. It's not a problem to solve, though. It's a transition to honor. It's a transition to really, really honor. So, how do you move from that one identity to the next? Well, it's not by forcing and it's not by hustling more. It's not by reinventing yourself overnight. You cross what I call the identity bridge. The bridge is built through awareness, honesty, reflection, expansion, release, courage, and clarity. But not the type of clarity that comes from thinking harder, but the type that comes from allowing yourself to tell the truth about who you are and who you are becoming. And that truth becomes a compass of sorts. It's a quiet, gentle, powerful compass pointing toward where you're meant to go next. You know, one of the biggest blocks for high achieving women is this: loyalty to who you used to be. Think about that: loyalty to who you used to be. You don't want to disappoint the version of you who worked so hard, or the people who expect you to still be her, or the reputation she built, or the identity she protected. But you don't owe your life or your career to an outdated version of yourself. You don't. You can thank her and you can honor her, you can appreciate her and still grow beyond her. This is self-loyalty. This is leadership. This is evolution. This is where everything shifts. Because once you begin evolving internally, your definition of success starts to change. Success becomes feeling aligned. It comes feeling like you're on purpose, feeling grounded, feeling emotionally spacious, feeling like your career and your life reflects who you are now. Success becomes an inner experience, not an outer performance. And here's the amazing part. Once you redefine success, your next chapter becomes infinitely clearer. I know this from my own life and from the many women I've talked to over the past few years who have been in this transition. And if you're resonating with this and recognizing yourself in what I've been saying here in this episode, and if it's touching something in you, maybe if you're feeling that internal shift, then I want to tell you about something I'm building for women exactly in this season. I'm creating a clarity experience for women in leadership who are standing in this identity in between space. Women who are ready to step into their next chapter with intention, alignment, and purpose. But before what I'm building launches, I want to bring together a small group that I call the Clarity Circle, the small group to shape the very first version of this experience. And you also receive guided support through this transition. So if you're feeling a pull or resonance or even that quiet internal yes, I'd like to hear from you. You can go ahead and just let me know that you're interested in this early access. Just head on over to my website, robinlowens.com/waitlist. Again, that's robinlowens.com/waitlist. And there you'll be put on the wait list. So you'll be the first to be invited into this exclusive workshop and experience created just for this group. So trust what you're feeling. And I want you to take this with you as we end out the episode today. You are allowed to evolve. You are. You are allowed to evolve. You are allowed to change. You're allowed to want a chapter that feels aligned with who you are now. And you are allowed to outgrow versions of yourself that were once perfect for you. You're not behind. You're not lost. You're not messy. You're becoming. And the next chapter is already forming. So thank you again. I appreciate you for listening in and for being here. And we'll go even further in the next episode. In the meantime, this is Dr. Robin.